Something I wanted to share is so there's a lot of judgment for people that, oh, nobody wants to work. That's what I hear, um, influencers saying, and I don't know, just everybody, whichever side of the aisle that they're on. And I wanted to talk about the conventional workplace. Now, when I entered the world of work, when I entered the world, there was a lot of toxins in my environment. I was in New York, and my dad was a building superintendent. And so there was a lot of building products, like large drums of chemicals used to wax the floor and I don't know, just do this or that. And so there was a lot of chemical exposure. We had paint and so forth. And while he did keep things properly, conventionally as instructed to do, this was like in the 70s and 80s. So like he was in one of his jobs, he had to take out asbestos, and there was no masks, there was no protective gear. So when he came home, everybody was probably exposed to asbestos from just him taking off the work uniform and whatnot. So, and then, I doubt he was properly treated when he was like after, like during World War II, his family were refugees from their original area. So they had to go to the north and where they were in Europe. And um, people got typhus. So from what little research I've done is like, and it was like a near death experience. It like so many people got it in his family. And it was just basically you're left to your own devices at the time, and this was like in the 40s. So, and he said to me that he wondered because they had brought prisoners, like the Germans had brought, was it the Germans? No, the communists. The communists had brought prisoners nearby to the area, so of where they were. And so my dad was saying that he wondered if the communists were trying to get the locals sick. Now, if we're seeing what's going on in Hawaii, California, Australia, Canada, like they want to kill people. And these communists wanted to kill people in the 40s, and they want to kill people in America or in the West in the 20s, the 2020s, it seems to me. And so, uh, so my dad was never treated for typhus, typhoid. From what I understand, he didn't talk about any medications. And from what I understand, is that you can have chronic typhus. So I wonder if that contributed to his other health problems and if it affected us, the immediate family that was exposed to him. Like, did we all have, because every once in a while there would be a big flu or something, and we all have had some sort of chronic illness or something that was very difficult to cope with in my family of origin. And my dad had he had very good insurance, and but no doctor looked into anything like that. No doctor had any intelligence to say, hey, let's check, because his blood panels had like it even automatically said, hey, your thyroid is low, or your such and such was too high, or whatever. Like, all doctors will talk about is cholesterol. They'll forget everything else. They won't care about your iron levels. They won't care about your thyroid levels, even when it's on the test, saying that it's too high or too low. I mean, doctors, in my opinion, are garbage, because they're only little foot soldiers for insurance companies and for the law. And I don't know. I guess insurance companies want people to be sick. I mean, clearly the globalists want people to be sick and nearly dead, and they only want people around for human sacrifice. I don't know, because this doesn't make sense that you don't tell people, hey, treat any low grade infection, deal with your parasites, deal with like detox from chemical exposure, reduce chemical exposure, reduce unnecessary chronic stress. And that's what I want to talk about in the workplace. So, the workplace as of 2023, it's incredibly loud. Like it is unreasonably loud. And not only that, people are exposed to a lot of different chemicals. Nobody cares. OSHA is not protecting workers. OSHA is useless. Human rights is useless, like the government organization. And so as an entry level worker, you're exposed to punishing, like damaging levels of noise, damaging levels of chemicals that nobody will admit to. But like if you put a bird or a rat in that amount of chemical for an hour, they'd be dead. But you're just supposed to be doped up on whatever the doctor says, so you can just be a robot, a good little robot to work as a cashier somewhere and make some a lot of money. That's what it seems to me. And so people who are privileged and insulated and they love to bash entry level workers, you know, like you scum of the earth, you should be, and the thing is entry level workers, like minimum wage is like $7 an hour as of 2023, federally. I believe it's $7 or $8 an hour. Now, who's going to live on that when all the people doing their real estate schemes and charging 1,500 for an apartment? Like, what entry level worker can afford $1,500 a month? I mean, if you're making $8 an hour, how are you going to be able to afford $1,500 a month? And what heartless jerks are, we'll just get 2 or 3 jobs, and how, like people don't, like when you're being exposed to chemicals and chronic unmanaged levels of noise, working with bad equipment, working for bad bosses, working for bad companies, working with bad employees, having to deal with bad customers, which is seems like what we have, and commuting in crazy situations. Not to mention the whole 5G thing and the whole medical, like everybody's trying to impersonate doctors, because when somebody's saying you have to do some sort of medical procedure, that's an impersonation of a doctor, because that person, that cashier who's trying to get you to do something medical, that employer who's trying to get you to do something medical, do they have a doctor's degree? Do they have an MD that's current? Are they registered with your local physician's board? No, these are people who have some sort of chip on their shoulder, some sort of control issue. Even the Board of Health, they are not medical doctors. They are just employees who are there to implement, to make sure there's no poop on the sidewalks or something, but they're not there to force you to do anything. Just like a boss can't force you to have sex with them, a boss can't force you to have your children have sex with them. But that's what's going on. This is a perverted supernatural ritual that they want you to do, whether it's to suffocate yourself, whether it's to rape your blood brain barrier, whether it's to rape your bloodstream. Um, and so these influencers, whether they're about freedom or not, when they're bashing entry level workers, like entry level workers have the most horrible working conditions, doing the most thankless work, and they're the tiredest people that get paid the least. I mean, they have so many things going against them, and it's by that they're there and that they have any graciousness to impart. I don't blame an entry level worker when they're a jerk and whatever because they're exhausted. They didn't have a good sleep at night because their neighbor's dog or their neighbors themselves were partying and keeping them up, or there were loud machines going on all the time. I've lived in poor like poor residential areas where it's just like there's always something weird, creepy, sketchy, um, you know, torturing you when you're trying to rest, when you're trying to sleep. There's always some sort of noise going on, and nobody will address it, or some sort of weird fragrance going on, and people try to gaslight you. And that's what that entry level person, like, uh, God bless them. Uh, so anyways, and there's, like privileged progressive liberals assume that entry level workers have advocacy, that there's protections. There is not, unless you are murdered right in front of a judge or something, and that judge actually cares. I mean, I'm sure a bloody murder could happen, and everybody would ignore it. Um, and the ones that are acknowledged are there because it suits somebody's political power. Just like we're seeing, like one of Obama's chefs was found naked in like 3 feet of water, drowned. Nobody's caring. Nobody does anything. I mean, all these people who were executed during the lockdowns in nursing homes and hospitals, nobody cares. People are just like, oh, they're just hypnotized by the narrative, or they just want to uh, be able to continue to go travel and watch their TikTok videos and I don't know what. I mean, is that really life? I guess so. But I really don't think selfish people should assume that entry level people who don't want to get nasally raped or blood raped or suffocated, and who don't have the energy to work 3 jobs to pay for a $1,500 apartment that's a slum anyway, because landlords are making, they have a racket, and then cities want their property taxes, so that's just another racket, um, which is probably increasing why rents are high. So, anyways, my point is that it's not entry level workers' fault. If there was a job where it wasn't torture to be at the job, where people could have a home where they get to sleep, where it wasn't torture to try to sleep at night, people would be fine. Like people would be doing okay. But instead, we're being sprayed by the glyphosate and weird chemtrails and who knows what in our food, water, air, and then the psychological stuff and the 5G and um, you know people acting out now more than ever. Like it's like, and the entry level worker has the worst quality of life, and these snooty entitled influencers who hate entry level workers. I mean, they're totally like the all this stuff about all this activism people are grifting on. It's not um it's not really, I think, isms. I think it's about um like courtesy and manner. I think because who's making the biggest splash about these isms? It's people with no manners. It's people with no social skills. They're screeching or they're being perverted. Like they're just being offensive. Like they're just like in any culture, like that person would be put to death because they are so deranged. And like people are calling good manners white supremacy. They're calling, you know, proper speech or fine literature white supremacy. And it is not inherently a white thing to have good manners, to be articulate. to write wonderful literature, to do great things. It's like, and history will prove my point. Is like there's amazing people, who are black or Hispanic or Asian or whatever, that that are stellar, that are role models, and none of them are men dressed as women with exaggerated boobs and exaggerated hair screeching. None are effeminate men who are threatening to take heterosexual people's children or children's children. Like, there's no role model, and it's not because of an ism. It's because, like, what people are trying to say is white supremacy is basically blaming, like saying human decency is white supremacy. And what's taken over America are these toddlers, these emotional toddlers having a tantrum, and these malignant narcissists who insist that they be loved and admired for their bad behavior. And this is just not acceptable. Like, they will never be a role model. All of these people who are trying to say their opponents are lying, cheating, stealing, when they themselves are doing the lying, cheating, and stealing and hiding it. Like, you know, there are some people who are censoring everything. There's other people who may not be perfect, but they did not censor. Like, when like I do not support that guy whose name begins with a T this time around. But that person whose name begins with a T that was involved with Warp Speed, he or she did not censor anybody. Like, you were allowed to look into stuff. You were allowed to call him names. But the current administration, um, like, people are getting put in jail for stuff they tweeted about the current administration person. Like, and there's all this censorship that's been going on, and extreme questionable behavior by his son that is the left doesn't want to have any admission or acknowledgement. Like, I have a friend, or had a friend, who was like, who had been molested when she was a child, and it thoroughly informed all of her life. And every day she was tormented by it. And when I hinted that, during his presidential, when he was doing his campaigns, I was like, well, it seems like Biden is a child molester. And there's just all these pictures and stuff like that. And this person I knew who had been haunted by her own molestation was like, well, Biden is my pedophile. And the fact that somebody who considers pedophilia for herself being wrong, and for somebody who was traumatized by being molested herself, that she condones that other anonymous children get molested by Biden, is just mind-boggling. And it shows the lack of morality, or I mean, it's just so incredibly selfish. Like, well, I don't want to be molested, but we'll let this guy molest kids. I mean, that is not right. Like, that is evil to me. And anyway, so what do you guys think? I uh, so I think, if you want entry level workers to work in your area, there has to be housing that they can afford. And like, how they sign Walmart employees up with um, food stamps, and they probably get them on Section 8. So Walmart can pay them, $8 an hour. So they have the government subsidizing basic housing costs for employees at Walmart, which sounds to me very communist, very fascist. Um, But I think instead of expecting the government to subsidize your employees' housing and food, that you need to have housing that's affordable. But people are so greedy. So cities are greedy, and so they raise the property taxes. And then landlords are greedy too, because, and I think they're competitive. I think landlords, and I've noticed this in Iowa or South Dakota or whatever, like they're charging the same prices that you could see in San Francisco, where there's not as many resources or benefits to being there. And it's like, how are locals affording that kind of rent when there's not a lot of work and the minimum wage is so low? And I'm thinking that cities and landlords are expecting that renter to ask their parents and grandparents to help fund their housing. And I know people who during the lockdowns they had adult children who they paid for housing. So I think that's what's going on is uh, the people who are able to survive have parents and grandparents subsidizing their living expenses, or they're able to get on Section 8. But I just don't think that's, when you're dependent on the government for everything in your life, you're at the mercy of what the government wants to do to you. And and now with, I mean, with what happened during the past 3 years, um, and just like, who wants to work for the government? Who wants to like force everybody to do what the government wants them to do? Like, it's not decent people. Like, there's people who like to do some sort of power trip, and when you're at the mercy, at their mercy, you let um, bad behavior go because you're like, I just want to get through this horrible experience and, go on with the rest of my life. And so, anyways, if you want entry level workers working at your coffee shop, your donut shop, your gas, station or whatever, you have to have housing that they can afford working at their $8 an hour job. And the thing is, an $8 an hour job is not necessarily going to be 40 hours a week. A lot of employers want somebody to work only 20 hours a week so they don't have to pay employees. So, um, so understand, $8 an hour times 20, 160 a week. That's before taxes. So what? They're going to make like $100 a week. That's like $500 a month. Like, and that's the total after tax kind of a rate. And so, yeah, the jerky person is like, well, get a second and third job. So then that person has to commute to and from the first 20-hour week job. Then they have to spend it's almost another job to commute to this second job or third job. And so, yeah, okay, so three jobs, and they make, 1,500 a month. But landlords want you to make three times the amount that rent is. So if a rent's 1,500, you gotta make $5,000 a month. Like, who makes $5,000 a month? It's really like, it's this impossible situation. And when you talk to landlords, they're like, well, this is just how it is, and other people can make it work. So, and so there you go. Then you just don't have entry level workers, or all your entry level workers are going to be immigrants from Africa or Mexico, where 30 people are living in the same house. And I think that's kind of like like, I've heard people complain about that. But that's the only way people can survive in this unrealistic housing market. Um, yeah. So I think, yes, the property manager companies, the cities who are raising property values are, so the homeowner has to pay 1,500 or 2,000 a year. But I think landlords are really greedy because landlords want this passive income, and so they're charging more than the local area can provide. And so they have to get people who are able to get parents or grandparents to pay, or who will do that Section 8, or who will scam the landlords, I think. Um, yeah, and and that's not good either. I just think have a reasonable amount of rent. So you have to take like I think if you're gonna be a landlord, you need to take into account the minimum wage for the area and what's the job market like in the area. Is it just donut shops and gas stations that are hiring part-time workers? If you have like a slummy apartment complex, you need to make it um, correspondent with the wages of the area. Like what I notice is like when I'm looking at ads on Craigslist, they're like brand new, newly refurbished or newly painted and blah blah blah, all this new, upgraded to the nth degree. Nobody wants upgraded to the nth degree, because then what happens is the landlord's like, I'm going to charge you 2,000, 3,000 for a place when somebody just wants just a home, like just a place to survive or ideally thrive, you know. And like people come into a cute little um, neighborhood and they destroy it and make it all modern and create a strode, and it's just an unlivable, unwalkable area. And that those designers, those city planners that destroy cute little areas, they themselves live in a cute little area that's overpriced. That, I mean, it's just so hypocritical, because they would never live in the places that they build, that these city planners or these architects and whatnot. So they destroy places that that they're just looking at numbers on a piece of paper. They could care less that they're affecting all these people's lives. But when they go home or when they go on vacation, they choose a cute little Airbnb that has a pretty little view and is walkable. And I mean, that's what bothers me about living in touristy areas and seeing all these people walking around or watching videos, walk and talk videos of great cities or places in Europe. I'm like, who are all these people traveling? 5 people, how, because these people, so you're paying for 5 or 6 airplane flights, and you're, paying for that hotel room, and you're paying for all their meals. And that's a lot of money. That's thousands of dollars in a week. And like, are all these people who are traveling like human traffickers? Are they drug dealers? And yes, they look respectable, but drug dealers, they want to look respectable. Human traffickers, so they totally want to look respectable, um, because that's how they get you, whether one way or the other, like whatever level of human trafficking or drugs that you're at, they want to, they need to lure you with being trustworthy, being likable, being attractive, being a good role model. But anyway, I just wonder how many Gavin Newsoms are running around, or Nancy Pelosi's and stuff like that. And I think people who are destroying not only America and the West and humanity and Earth itself, I think they should be denied service. I think they're harming us. And these local city planners who are ruining cities, and they know how they would like to live and where they would want a vacation, but they're ruining places for the rest of us. um, it's just insane. And the Bible says vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So maybe I'm wrong about denying service to people like Gavin Newsom and whatnot, but that's just my knee-jerk reaction. But I just want to say entry level workers have it very hard. And I just find it really annoying when, um, snooty, entitled, insulated people complain about the lack of labor when It's like if there was affordable housing, you would have so many people, so many Americans, born and bred Americans, who would be there. Like I keep on seeing, so I was an immigrant complaining, saying that, well, we immigrants do jobs that you Americans won't. No, it's that people have bought up properties, so there's nothing affordable now. There's international investors and these evil crony corporations who have bought out properties and they're warehousing them, so nobody's even living in these properties. And then there's the one to twosies landlords who are being greedy. So there's no place for people in America to live. But when an immigrant comes in, they're often, it seems like, helped by 30 different family members, and so there's 30 people, like I was saying, living in one place. So you can, if you're paying, if 30 people are paying, helping pay a 1,500 a month rent, that's definitely more doable than one person having to do that. And in America, we're not taught to have 30 people live in one place. We don't have that mentality. We can barely be, two roommates in a living situation. Um, so, and that's just a cultural thing. And, it's great. It's great when 30 people can live in one place. I mean, I've lived in communities, and yeah, it can work if you have the right, you know, mutual agreement and social support and whatnot. So, you know, but I think it's more like than what people are saying, because people do like to bash entry level workers for not wanting to work, but people will. But you have to have a place to live. Like you have to have a place where you can sleep and eat, so you can go to work. And when there's nothing that a person can afford, and you're living in your car or whatever, or living at your parents' house, like that's just not conducive when you're culturally American. Like you just it doesn't work. um so yeah, I think the world, America, would be so different if all these crazy rents that are like 3,000 a month, or vacation rentals, even hotel prices, if all hotels were like $35 a night, and if all rentals were like $500 a month, there so many people would get off the streets. So many people would be like, oh yeah, I'm not being homeless, I can afford, because people are somehow generating that much money to get drugs and whatever else they're doing. Like $500 a month or $35 a night, that's a reasonable thing to, like, that, like people could do odd jobs and get a hotel room. um so so I think that would be a miracle if housing was affordable. But um nobody wants to do that because they're greedy. And I think also people want to keep other people out. People people like people who own houses, and like they don't want new people being able to move in. So they only want, the irony is, they want people who will pay 300,000 to move into the area. But who's like, whoever is going to move to your area, whether it's Montana, South Dakota, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, the only people who have $300,000 cash to pay right there and then is going to be some Silicon Valley or some New York, some hardcore progressive liberal type that's going to want your child to be exposed to gay and trans propaganda, and they're going to want you to suffocate and do the breaking of your crib-form plate with nasal swabs and the poisoning of your blood. Like, so, and so, and the greedy people, conservatives, Christians, they're like, well, I want that money. They just want that money. And then though they start complaining, and then they're like, what's going on in our with the school board and city council? Why are they doing all this progressive liberal stuff? Because you brought in liberals, because you were so greedy. You sold your house. Like, if you want to keep your area with your values, you need to sell your house to a local for $50,000 and not $300,000 to somebody from California or Oregon or some, faceless property management company. But people are greedy. People are greedy. They are lazy, and maybe they just like to complain because um, there's just so much of this kind of nonsense going on, like people being very irresponsible and immature, and then they're so cowardly. Like, okay, they've been invaded by the progressive liberal agenda, and uh, you know, like they're just like, oh well, we've got 10 people in the area that care, so we'll just let them do all the work. Um, and I understand life is just really stressful, and I think it's engineered this way. Like, work is so demanding, the commute is really hard, the living situation is really hard, so you don't really get sufficient rest, and you have to really work hard to even try to get rest to stick, and you spend all your extra time trying to heal from whatever and nurture yourself and fortify yourself for the next day. And so it's really hard because now we have these multiple levels of warfare against us. Just this like 10 different crises going on immediate to our area. And so it is really hard um, to think right. But I think I think folks need to be like, not so greedy just because somebody has $300,000, just because you think, oh well, I want to have $300,000. If you care about your area, sell to your local area. Don't sell to California. Don't sell to New York. I love California. I love New York. I love New Yorkers and Californians, but they are very brainwashed, and they're very active and organized, and they are demonized. They are morally bankrupt. They're like, um, children want to have sex with adults. It's children's fault if a pedophile assaults them. Like, it's minor attracted person. It's the minor's fault because those pedophiles, they were attracted to the minor, and it's because the minor was so attractive. It has nothing to do with the adult. The adult has no self control. It's just similar with that rape mentality in the 50s or whatever, where people were blaming women for being seductive, and so they blame the rape victim, and that's what they're doing with children. They're blaming the children for being attractive uh, to these pedophiles. So, and not all liberals are that degenerate, but they still are like, they're at the beginning of that spectrum. Um, so yeah, it's a tough situation, but I really think that if you're a homeowner, a landlord, a property manager, a property owner, and you're renting, like, or if you're a city council person, you need to, like, if you want more people who are going to do those entry level $8 an hour jobs for 20 hours a week, you need to have housing that somebody, like, let's say you have, I don't know, 1,000 jobs, entry level jobs. You need to have enough housing to support 1,000 of those entry level jobs, and at a rate that they can afford. So what is if somebody's making $500 a month, what kind of housing do you got for that person? Because that person who's making $500 a month, they have to pay for the electricity, they have to pay for the water, they have to pay for the trash, they have to pay for transportation, they have to pay for food. Like, you don't want everybody on welfare, on food stamps and stuff. So you need to make the amenities there, like housing, within reason. Or there needs to be more value to the dollar. So yeah, I really think if housing was affordable, like, if there were single occupancy units for $200 a month, um, you would see your homeless situation like go away. And if every city had something like that, uh, all these, like, there's large concentrations of homeless people in LA or Denver or wherever, but they would go back to where they have good connections if they could afford to live on their own. It's my theory. I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking people who are living in rents, like a lot of people, liberals, hate on folks who reject the system, who reject getting help. But the thing is, getting help through the system is a form of human trafficking. You are consenting to being tracked. And the liberals who are like, well, you just got to play the game. Well, some people don't want to play the game, and they're not assholes because they're refusing to be being trafficked. Nobody wants to be trafficked. Some people don't want to be trafficked, and that's their right. So when you give a homeless person agency something reasonable, like $200 a month to pay rent, they are going to jump on that, because to be a homeless person, to still be alive, these are very resourceful, persistent, capable people, man. These are some of the best salespeople you will ever find. I was like tortured by this black homeless lady who was asking everybody for money in Philadelphia, and she was so excellent at her job. She was driving me up the wall. I yelled at her and stuff like that, but I'm like, she should work for some high level Fortune 500 company. Just dress her up in a nice outfit, and like, take care of her or whatever, so she doesn't look so stressed out or whatever. But just these people, these homeless people are untapped talent, best salespeople, very persistent, very resilient, very clever. And then yeah, there's some shady people or whatever, but like, I mean, there's tons of shady people who are working in positions of responsibility in government and medicine and stuff like that, law. So there's no difference about the caliber of people. It's just how well fed and well washed and well mannered these folks are. So our homeless community is very capable, and probably more capable than insulated, privileged, entitled people. And um, they just, uh, they're not able to play the game. They don't want to play the game. But if the game is made reasonable, and that's my point, is that housing in America is unreasonable, and I suspect it's unreasonable worldwide, and it's artificially inflated because parents and grandparents, I think, and I don't know, something else is paying uh, the unreasonable rents, because a lot of people can't afford it. A lot of working people cannot afford rents. Like, I was in New York, or in San Francisco some years ago, and this person was making $70,000 a year working for the government, and she was saying she couldn't afford rent in San Francisco or in the Bay Area. So, um, yeah. But will rent be made affordable ever? No, probably not. And it's just, in the globalists, they don't want you moving out into the wilderness and whatnot. Um, that's why they're doing all their spraying chemtrails and putting bioweapons, like mosquitoes with malaria and who knows what with leprosy, and hard-shelled ticks with Lyme disease and co-infections and stuff like that. Like, they are out to get everybody. I mean, it's a very systemic, organized situation. So, I mean, I'm just waiting for Jesus to return, because that's I think where the solution is. Because no, people are not going to. They're not gonna. Nobody's gonna fix this. Um, it's just it's a two multi-pronged, like, the assault against us is people are profiting off of it. There's probably a lot of good people who are working for these bad forces, and these good people are just like, I want my paycheck. I don't want to know how my contribution is harming humanity. They probably know. Like if you don't know the outcome, like I knew somebody whose mother worked for the government and she didn't know what was the outcome of her labor. And so she was probably in some black box program or something like that. I don't know if I'm using the terminology correctly, but um, anyway, it's just like I don't think anybody is going to come up with a solution um, because it's just so complex. And there's so many people who are dependent on the evil. Like there's good people who are dependent on the income from the evil. And these good people are so addicted to their social standing. And they're they're so addicted to money and travel and clothes and redoing their kitchen and whatnot. And they think that maybe their obligation is to make money no matter what, no matter if all humanity dies as a result of their efforts. So this is what we get. But yeah, I think there's just more to the situation than bashing entry level workers who can't afford to live in your area, like blaming them for not working there. They can't even live where you are. So stop complaining that they're not there to serve you coffee, and stop bashing homeless people, because if you and your friends who own properties are charging, 1,500, 3,000 a month for a rental, and the nobody, like, and more reasonable rent would be 500 a month, you get what you deserve, because again, if we had single occupancy units available for rent for $200 a month, a lot of homeless people would get off the streets, um, and you'd have more entry level workers working at your donut shops and gas stations and cashier, at your grocery stores and whatnot. So, and if you don't want, 300, three illegals living in a house, have affordable rents for your locals to live, because it's just the situation is creating this circumstances. And I think people are like, well, if we um, had affordable rents, then all these illegals would be living there. Maybe they would for a time, but eventually things would probably settle out. And yeah, you gotta have law enforcement. You gotta have people with morals. Like that's one of the things, I forget, was it Jefferson or Madison, but or was it Benjamin Franklin, that we can have a constitution, but if we don't have a godly people, we're not going to have a country. And people have wandered so far away from God, they don't know who Jesus is, and they completely lack morality. They're like, well, as long as I'm politically correct, um, I'm like, we're going to be fine. And the thing is, no, like our God isn't about political correctness. He's about morality. And this morality is based on truth and fact. Just like there is only man and there's only woman, and there can be only marriage between a man and a woman, not two men and one woman, not two women and one man, not any mix therein. And that's, and that upsets certain religions. It upsets certain liberal agendas. But that's what God said. And God isn't trying to cramp anybody's style. He's saying this is just how it's going to work for you. Like God gives us instructions because he knows the nature of humanity, and like what brings out the best in people. And he's trying to help us keep things simple, keep things um, pure, Because when we start to be perverted, when we start to be twisted and um, unhealthy, and we call it good, it opens us up to supernatural attack. And, uh, and it definitely seems to be apparent right now. Like 40 years ago, I met people who were gay or lesbian, and they had had certain experiences, and they were traumatized and healing, and like that was very different. That is very different than what I see right now, where it's just like some sort of weird something kind of creepy. And the fact that they want to teach this kind of stuff in school, like why? Like I thought school was about reading, writing, and arithmetic, so you could basically function as a worker. Like why do you have to be sexualized at school? Like, are we grooming children to be prostitutes? Like, is that some sort of goal? Like, why would we want children to become prostitutes and you know as children? Like, that sounds like a pedophile's dream, right? Who's running this country? Who's running the world? Like, like, are pedophiles? Is it just all about like sex with children, 24 hours? I mean, like, how much pedophilia can you do in a day? I guess if you're a demon or demonized, that's what you do. I don't know. I don't know. It's just I'm just wondering, because why do you have to sexualize children in school? Like, what? Like, I thought school was to prepare you for something, prepare you for adulthood. So if you're being sexual in school, so what is that? What are you doing in college, or what are you going to be doing for work? Oh, you're going to be doing sexual stuff because that's your experience. That's what employers are looking for. Employers are looking for experience. So so if your job is sex in school, then your job is going to be sex at work as an adult. Is that what parents want for their children? Porn, is that what schools are grooming kids? So you're going to be a prostitute and you're going to be doing porn? Like, is that the vision of America? Is that part of own nothing and be happy? Oh, you're just going to be watching porn. You're going to be doing porn, watching porn. I mean, when we look at some of these dystopian movies or books, like Brave New World, it seems to be. And that 1984 book where they had that 15 minutes of hate. And I think there was something in Brave New World that was similar. Like, I wonder if that's kind of what's going on with people. We see all these crazy like screaming Karen kind of videos when progressive men are screaming and women are screaming, pushing the gay agenda, the trans agenda. Um, and or I mean, I do see, like, on conspiracy websites, a lot of race baiting, and but just like also like the stealing that goes on, and road rage. Like, is that some sort of 15 minutes of hate? Like, do humans need to do that? Or, is that some sort of satanic hack? I don't know. But um, thanks for watching. And yeah, let me know what you think about these things. God bless.